Hey there, everybody. So, this is my little weekly highlight of the Wheeler Crit. This is from May the 17th. I'm not sure what actual number this is. It could be 8. I don't know. It's been kind of so sporadic with, having some of the races getting rained out or whatever. I thought this one might be rained out, as you can see from all the puddles and stuff, and kind of sprinkled all morning, but it poured the night before, so. But yeah, we ended up getting a race, and it was pretty cold actually. It was probably only maybe lower 60s, so there's you can see a lot of guys with arm warmers and knee warmers and stuff. So, and yeah, anyways, I don't know. I learned a couple good lessons in this race, which that's something, maybe not so much a lesson learned, but a lesson, reminded, or a couple, I guess you could say. So, first one, this is really the first I got to ride my bike. I rode one time in the last week and a half. I was out on a week-long trip where I didn't have my bike with me and stuff, so just kind of in my mind, coming to this night, I was kind of really questioning stuff, and didn't have much confidence, thinking, I'm gonna, everybody's been out killing it, racing and doing intervals and whatever, and I've been just doing nothing, so I'm gonna probably get just dropped. It's gonna hurt really bad, and, but honestly, that a week, 2 weeks, it's not really gonna make much difference, if anything, in your fitness. If anything at all, you're probably going to be a little bit fresh, if you've been riding pretty consistently up until that point. So, and that was the case. A little bit flat initially, and once you get going for a bit, then it's not a huge deal. You might notice this one started kind of midway through. It's kind of fumbling around early on. With they started pretty quick, and I didn't get to actually hit the start button until after we kind of got started there. So I don't know. It's kind of started maybe midway through the half lap, first lap, anyway. So, but basically, what I'm trying to say, point being, if you've been putting in the time, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months before, don't really underestimate your ability, what you should be able to do and whatnot. And, I rode uber conservative just because I thought, I was going to be hurt really bad. I was probably going to get dropped. I was going to have a hard time hanging and such. But, in reality, it wasn't. I never really felt in trouble or anything. I did ride pretty conservatively. I didn't attack or anything like that. Chase down a few things, but. I guess the point is, if you've been putting in the time, don't underestimate your, what you can do. If you haven't been riding for 6 weeks or something, yeah, that'd be a different story, and you're just jumping right into something like this. But, yeah, that's pretty much, I guess, what I'm getting at there for the first thing. Alright, so, the second lesson relearned is always kind of pay attention to what's going on as far as with the referees, the lap counter, whatnot. Back to the race action here. I put in a pretty hard little day here. Highfield took off and bridged up to these guys, which that was kind of the first one that we actually had a little gap that comes back again to that, I better just take it easy. But if we would have jumped into a quick rotation right here, this could have been we had a nice little, I don't know, could have stayed away for a bit, not necessarily the whole race, but you never know. So basically back to the lesson number 2. So anyway, we're plugging along. At the start of the race, they said we'd be going for 55 minutes. More or less, 55 minutes, maybe an hour. So I'm like, alright, so start my Garmin, and looking down as we're plugging along, I think the first time I looked at it, we were maybe 20 minutes in, Like, alright, I remember seeing 25 minutes, thinking, alright, we're coming up, almost halfway done, whatever, and so, in my mind, I'll start looking for the lap counter once I know, maybe when they usually will start it out with 5 to go, so, you we normally run about 1 minute or so, maybe a hair over 1 minute laps on this course, so, you can kind of deduct once there's 55 minutes, so usually I would have probably started looking, kind of thinking, maybe expecting the 5 to go with maybe 45 minutes. I would kind of start maybe looking for it. So that was kind of my little time stamp of, I would start paying attention then. And anyway, for whatever reason, it was kind of cold, and the race officials just decided to make the race only like 39 or 40 minutes long, so, lo and behold, around 35 minutes in, they start the 5 to go lap counter, and I don't know, I started at the end here, I started it with 5 to go, and it's, I'm just riding along, just JRAing, and, I'm like, why these guys, why is Stephen Cage positioning himself? Why is he jumping out from the back and, not even really thinking? But anyway, it got down to the very end, and, we're gradually picking it up. And I think half the guys maybe knew, and then the other half, those several guys around me that were like, why is everybody stopped? What's going on? And that's pretty much exactly what happened. So, I don't know, it's kind of silly. I guess the only thing really worse than, not knowing that you're sprinting for the finish or whatever, or you got 3 laps or 1 lap or whatever to go, is the only thing worse, I guess, is when you think it's the last lap, or you're finishing but you still have 1 to go and you celebrate. I guess that could be really the only thing worse, because not only do you look like an idiot, you're also going to get probably a not great finish. So, yeah, that's basically, pretty much what happened. Running a pretty good little match here, bridging up to Ricky and Evan were off the front here just a little bit. So I don't know, I had a couple good little efforts, but it was kind of silly at the end. This was definitely the first wheeler where we finished, and I wasn't ready to vomit, or very close to it or whatever. I was just like, what's going on? So. Yeah, that's kind of the gist of it there, and I don't know, it's a pretty fun night, more or less just kind of a motor pace session all night. Once I got, up in the mix at the front, a few times, rotate through, and one thing was, once you get towards the front, it's easier in general, because you don't have the seesaw, ripsaw effect of having to accelerate constantly if you're sitting too close to the back. But and every so often, every few minutes, you have to get up there and take a pull. So it kind of goes back to that. It's kind of like a fast group ride in a way, practice race. So it's just kind of a D-bag move if you get up to the front and you don't take your pull if you're going to be hanging out up there. So kind of one of those, whatever, you got to do it. So, or you can just sit in the back, where it's a little bit harder, but you never have to take any pulls. So, yeah, that's basically how it played out. And I think Ricky got first, and Stephen Cates got second, because he was paying attention, and Alejandro got third. Yeah. So we've got, I guess 2.5 weeks until the Pro-Am, Tulsa Tough, and all that. So we've got a couple more races, I guess, to get in. Kind of get that pre-race top end preparation. So yeah, it's kind of nice seeing those quite a few 3s out, that were out there mixing it up. So we had a pretty nice sized field, considering kind of how unseasonably chilly it was. And a lot of people may say, when you get used to, it being mid 80s and you go back into the low 60s, it's easy to kind of become a wimp again and feel cold. But it felt actually pretty good out there racing when you were just standing around after. It was, I don't know, kind of cold, but yeah, it's I was a little upset at first just because the race, was over so quick. But after, just had an extra beer, wasn't a huge deal after a bit. But it's mostly out there just to get fit and I don't know, whatever. So, but anyway, yeah, I've got this is just kind of the I don't know, coming up on, I just took out a few little bits and pieces where, getting a little racy or whatever. Most of the time I was just sitting in and riding along. So this is actually the start of the 5 to go right here. So I don't know. Mostly I'm just riding along. It's pretty anticlimactic finish. But anyway, yeah, that's it. And yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll hopefully get rained out next week, and we'll see you then.